Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a world of unseen threats, but also some pretty incredible scientific achievements that have really shaped global health and economies. We're talking about foreign animal diseases, FADs for short. These are infectious diseases that aren't typically in a country, but they can be absolutely devastating.
Right, to animal health, agricultural economies, and sometimes, yeah, even public health. They're a big deal.
So our mission today, really, is to give you a shortcut to getting informed about three of the, I guess, most historically and economically significant FADs for cattle. Rinderpest, foot and mouth disease, FMD and BSE, Bovine Spongiform Encephalopathy.
Yeah, mad cow disease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've got a fascinating stack of sources to unpack here, looking at why they matter, how they shaped history, and what lessons they hold for us going forward.
And what's really interesting is how these three, they all hit cattle, but there's such different challenges biologically.
That's so.
Well, they've demanded totally unique ways to try and control them. Their stories really highlight this crucial interplay between the biology of the disease, the economics, and international cooperation, or sometimes the lack of it.
Okay, so let's set the stage first. What exactly is a foreign animal disease? What's the core definition we're working with?
Basically, it's an infectious disease that's not normally present in a particular country or region. The key things are they're usually highly contagious. They can spread incredibly fast.
Right, so they pose this constant threat because they can just jump borders, that transboundary nature you mentioned.
Precisely. And that's why they matter so much. When they get introduced, the consequences can be, well, devastating. Huge impacts on animal health, crippling agricultural economies.
And sometimes public health, you said?
Yes, in some important cases, absolutely. Which is why catching them fast, containing them quickly, is just critical.
Okay, let's start with Rinderpest then. Often called the cattle plague or steppe murrain. Historically, this sounds like one of the most impactful FADs ever.
Oh, unquestionably. It was massive. It's a viral disease, highly contagious, caused by the Rinderpest virus, RTV. And interestingly, it's actually related to the human measles virus.
Really? Measles?
Huh.
And it hit cattle mainly.
Cattle and domestic water buffalo primarily, yeah. But also loads of other even-toed ungulates. Think large antelope, giraffes, wildebeest. It could wipe them out too.
And the signs sound just awful. Fever, depression.
Oh, terrible. Painful sores in the mouth, really bad diarrhea, discharges from the eyes, nose, mouth. It was grim.
And deadly.
Extremely. In animals that hadn't been exposed before, you'd see morbidity sickness approaching 100%. And mortality, death rates, often just as high. Almost total wipeouts in some herds.
Wow. How did something like that spread so effectively?
Well, mostly direct contact between animals, but also contaminated feed, water, and it could even be airborne to some extent.
Airborne too. That makes it tough.
It really does. But the real kicker was the short incubation period, usually only 3 to 15 days between infection and showing signs. And then it progressed incredibly fast. Death often came just 6 to 12 days after the signs appeared. So you had this window for silent spread.
Ah, so animals could be moved around, look perfectly healthy, but actually be shedding the virus already.
Exactly. Before anyone even knew there was a problem, made containment a nightmare.
I was looking into this. The history just blew me away, the sheer scale of it. For centuries. Can you paint a picture of just how bad this cattle plague was?
It was a true scourge, honestly. It's hard to overstate. Think of a plague that didn't just kill livestock, but literally reshaped global trade, sometimes sparked revolutions, caused famines.
Yeah.
Its impact goes way back, even mentioned in records from ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
But the massive outbreaks, the panzootics in 18th century Europe, just catastrophic. Hundreds of millions of livestock lost.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, and that's not just, losing animals. That's economic collapse for entire regions. Starvation, loss of draft power for farming. It completely upended societies.
That's hard to fathom. But there must have been a turning point. How did we even start fighting back against something like Rinderpest?
Well, one early observation was key. Animals that survived Rinderpest seemed to be immune for life.
Okay, so recovery meant protection.
Right. But the real breakthrough came much later, in the late 1930s. A researcher named Edwards developed an attenuated virus vaccine, weakened virus.
The standard approach now, basically.
Kind of. But this was a big deal then. It was injectable, didn't need serum from recovered animals, and crucially, they figured out how to freeze-dry lyophilization.
Ah, so it could be stored and transported easily. without needing refrigeration constantly.
Exactly. That was the game changer. It meant you could actually do mass vaccination campaigns nationally, continent-wide, even in really remote areas.
And that led to eradication.
Eventually, yes. But it took decades of sustained, internationally coordinated effort. Vaccinations, surveillance, control measures.
A huge undertaking.
Monumental. But it culminated in 2011 when the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and WOAH, the World Organization for Animal Health, officially declared Rinderpest eradicated worldwide.
Wow. So it's gone, completely gone.
From the wild, yes. It was the first animal disease ever to be globally eradicated, and only the second infectious disease period after human smallpox.
That's incredible. So this success story, it must offer some massive lessons for tackling other FADs, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's proof, really. Proof that if you have a common global goal, you have the scientific tools, and you get coordinated international action. You can achieve amazing things in animal health. It's a blueprint.
But is it completely gone? You mentioned labs.
Good point. Despite eradication in the field, RPV, the virus material, is still stored in a small number of secure laboratories around the world.
So there's still a risk. Accidental release, maybe something worse.
There's a persistent, albeit low, risk, yes. That's why it remains a globally notifiable disease. We need continuous vigilance, surveillance, biothreat reduction efforts. The FAO and WOA have this vigilance campaign to make sure we don't forget the lessons learned and stay prepared.
Okay, so Rinderpest, a historic threat, a monumental victory through global effort, but still needing vigilance. Let's pivot now. Foot and mouth disease, FMD. You said this is a very different beast.
Yeah, very different. While Rinderpest is this amazing story of eradication, FMD, well, FMD remains a persistent, economically devastating threat across much of the world.
Okay, so what is FMD exactly?
It's another highly contagious viral disease caused by an aptovirus, and this one affects all cloven-hoofed animals.
All of them. So cattle, pigs, sheep, goats.
Yep, so all the main domestic ones. Plus, over 70 species of wild animals, too. Deer, buffalo, antelope.
And the key sign, blisters.
Exactly. Painful blisters or vesicles. You see them on the nose, tongue, inside the mouth, between the toes, just above the hooves, on the teats. Classic signs.
But you mentioned something earlier about why FMD is so tricky compared to Rinderpest. Something about types.
Ah, yes. The serotypes. This is critical. FMD virus exists as 7 distinct serotypes: A, O, C, SAT1, SAT2, SAT3, and Asia1.
7 different versions of the virus.
Essentially, yes. And there's even significant diversity within each serotype. The crucial point is getting infected with or vaccinated against one serotype does not give you protection against the others.
Unlike Rinderpest, which was just one type, basically.
Exactly. Rinderpest virus was relatively uniform. FMD's viral diversity is a primary reason it's so hard to control globally and why it remains such a persistent threat. We should note, though, serotype C hasn't actually been seen since 2004.
Okay, 7 types, no cross protection.
That sounds complicated. How does this one spread? Is it like Rinderpest?
Similar routes, but maybe even more efficient in some ways. Infected animals shed the virus everywhere: saliva, milk, semen, feces, urine.
Okay.
But FMD also spreads very effectively through aerosols. It can travel quite long distances on the wind.
Airborne again. Yep. And like Rinderpest, it has that silent spread potential. Animals can shed the virus for up to 4 days before they show any clinical signs.
4 days. Wow, so it's out there before you even know it's arrived.
Pretty much. Plus, direct contact, obviously. And indirect contact via fomites contaminated stuff.
Like what?
Clothes, boots, equipment, vehicles. The virus is surprisingly stable in the environment. It can survive for quite a while. Contaminated raw meat or dairy products can also transmit it. And carrier animals exist, though maybe less common transmission from them.
So it's not just animal to animal. It's animal to environment to animal, animal to human clothing to animal. It sounds incredibly difficult to contain.
You've nailed it. Those diverse, highly efficient transmission pathways, especially the airborne spread and its persistence on objects, make FMD exceptionally challenging to contain once an outbreak starts.
So you need biosecurity that thinks about everything, not just keeping animals apart.
Absolutely. Comprehensive, rapid biosecurity is key. And it has to address human movement, equipment, everything. That's why it's such a high-risk transboundary disease and why it has, unfortunately, agroterrorism potential, too.
Frightening. What does it actually do to the animals? What are the clinical signs like?
Well, incubation is usually 2 to 14 days. Morbidity, the sickness rate can hit 100%. Pretty much every susceptible animal exposed gets sick.
But mortality? Is it as deadly as Rinderpest?
Generally, no. Not in adult animals. Adult mortality is usually low, maybe 1 to 5%.
Oh, okay. That's better, I suppose.
But it can be much higher in young animals, calves, lambs, piglets. We can see 20% mortality or even more, often due to myocarditis and inflammation of the heart muscle.
Ah, so it hits the young ones hard.
Yes. And for the adults, even if they survive, the hallmarks are those really painful blisters. Causes severe lameness, they drool excessively because of mouth sores, they get fevers, lose appetite, lose weight.
Sounds miserable.
It is. And there are long-term effects, too. Growth retardation in surviving young animals, and a really significant persistent drop in milk production in dairy cows, sometimes up to 80%. That's a huge economic hit,
Yeah.
even if the cow recovers.
Yeah, even with low adult mortality, that widespread sickness, the suffering, the lost production, it sounds like a massive burden.
It absolutely is. The animal welfare burden is substantial. Chronic suffering for a large part of the herd from those painful lesions. And the economic losses go way beyond just the animals that die. That drop in milk, reduced weight gain, it hits farmers hard and impacts overall agricultural profitability significantly.
Which explains why it's considered one of the most economically significant livestock diseases globally.
Exactly. It massively disrupts trade. Countries that are certified free of FMD without using vaccination have this really high-value status for exports.
Free without vaccination. That sounds specific.
It is. And that status is constantly under threat. An outbreak, even a small one, can slam the door shut on export markets almost overnight.
Okay, so prevention and control must be paramount. What does that involve for FMD?
Well, first off, surveillance and early detection. Super critical. Seeing vesicles might make you suspect FMD, but you absolutely need lab confirmation.
Why? Are there look-alike diseases?
Yes, several other vesicular diseases can look similar, so you need tests like RT-PCR to detect the virus's genetic material or antigen ELISA to find viral proteins. Definitive diagnosis is essential.
Got it. And biosecurity.
Strict protocols are non-negotiable. Managing visitors, especially anyone who's been near livestock overseas, controlling pets and wildlife, limiting traffic on and off farms, thoroughly disinfecting equipment between farms, quarantining any new animals for at least 4 weeks.
What about people traveling?
Yeah, there are rules. If you travel to the U.S. from an FMD-affected country and visited a farm, you have to declare it. You're supposed to avoid contact with livestock here for at least 5 days and wash or disinfect clothes and shoes worn abroad. It really shows how much human movement and contaminated gear can spread these things.
Okay, that all makes sense. But what about vaccines? You said there were 7 serotypes. Is vaccination even practical?
The vaccine dilemma. Yes, vaccines exist. They can be effective if they match the specific serotype causing the outbreak. But, and this is the crucial trade-off, using FMD vaccines routinely can cause a country to lose that coveted FMD-free without vaccination status for trade.
Wait, using the vaccine hurts your trade status? That seems backwards.
It does, doesn't it? And worse, if there is an outbreak and vaccination is used as an emergency measure, sometimes those vaccinated animals still have to be culled afterwards to regain the free status faster.
Wow, so there's a massive disincentive to vaccinate routinely in FMD-free countries.
Exactly. This whole complex policy situation highlights this really tricky intersection of animal health, economics, and international politics. Countries often prioritize protecting their trade status over using routine vaccination as a preventative tool.
That sounds like a huge strategic gamble. Choosing trade access over maybe better immediate protection.
It's a constant balancing act for FMD-free regions like the US, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand. The economic value of maintaining that free without vaccination status for exports is just so enormous.
So the strategy is more about keeping it out entirely, and if it gets in, stamping it out aggressively rather than widespread preventative vaccination.
That's generally the approach in those regions, yes. Relying heavily on import controls, surveillance, and rapid response, including potential culling if an incursion happens.
Where is FMD most common now?
It's still endemic, meaning constantly present in large parts of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, also in some parts of South America and Europe, though control efforts vary.
But the U.S. has been free since.
Since 1929.
No.
A long time. But the risk of it getting reintroduced is always there. It's a continuous threat we have to guard against.
Okay, FMD. Persistent, economically devastating, complex control due to serotypes and trade rules. Let's shift gears again to BSE, Bovine Spongiform Encephalopathy, mad cow disease. You said this one is fundamentally different.
Fundamentally different. Because it's not caused by a virus or bacteria. It's caused by a prion.
A prion. What's that?
It's basically an abnormally folded protein. These misfolded proteins accumulate in the brain, causing damage that spongiform or spongy degeneration. And crucially, BSE is one that can directly affect human health.
Right, the link to human disease. That makes it a huge public health concern, not just animal health.
Absolutely. BSE is a progressive neurological disease in cattle. It's always fatal, but it's not contagious like FMD or Rinderpest, spreading through breath or casual contact. It's part of a family of diseases called transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, or TSEs.
Okay. And are there different types of BSE, like FMD has serotypes?
There are two main forms, but it's a different kind of distinction. There's classical BSE, or C-type. This is the one that caused the big outbreaks, particularly in the UK.
And how did that spread?
Through cattle eating contaminated feed, specifically meat and bone meal, MBM, that contained infectious prion material, mostly from the brain and spinal cord of infected cattle. The standard rendering process used to make MBM wasn't enough to destroy the prions.
So it was feed-borne? What's the other type?
That's atypical BSE. It comes in L-type or H-type forms. This type occurs very rarely, seemingly spontaneously, usually in older cattle, typically 8 years or older.
Spontaneously, so not from feed.
Correct. Atypical BSE is not associated with contaminated feed. This distinction is really important.
Why that?
Because classical BSE, the feed-borne one, is largely preventable. You ban the dangerous feed practices, you control the external threat. But atypical BSE seems to be this inherent internal risk that just happens occasionally, spontaneously. We understand it less well.
So you could potentially eradicate classical BSE through feed bans, but maybe not atypical BSE entirely.
Exactly. Achieving 0 cases of atypical BSE might be biologically impossible, given its apparently sporadic nature.
So for classical, it's diet. For atypical, it's just bad luck. Maybe related to aging.
That seems to be the case. Ingestion of contaminated feed is the primary route for classical. For atypical, just being an older animal seems to be the main risk factor.
Now, one of the scary things about BSE, I remember, was the incubation period. It takes a long time to show up.
Incredibly long. That's a major challenge. Clinical signs typically don't appear until roughly 3 to 6 years after the animal gets infected.
Years. So an animal could be infected for years and look perfectly normal.
Absolutely. This massive asymptomatic phase makes spotting it early based on clinical signs almost impossible, which again highlights why things like the feed bans and robust surveillance systems, not just waiting for sick animals, are so critical.
What do the signs look like when they finally appear?
They're neurological. Changes in behavior, nervousness, sometimes aggression, abnormal posture, coordination problems, difficulty standing up or walking, weight loss, decreased milk production too, and it just gets progressively worse until death.
The economic impact must have been huge, especially with the UK outbreak and the consumer fear.
Oh, devastating. Massive losses from animals dying or being culled, but also just the collapse in consumer confidence in beef and huge trade restrictions. WOA, the World Organization for Animal Health, plays a really key role here. They assess and officially recognize a country's BSE risk status, which heavily influences trade.
And the U.S. status is good now.
Yes, the U.S. achieved the best possible status in 2013. Negligible risk. That helps trade significantly. And interestingly, in 2015, WOH decided that atypical BSE cases wouldn't count against a country's risk status anymore.
Why did they do that?
Because atypical BSE happens spontaneously at a very low rate and isn't linked to feed contamination. It was seen as a different kind of risk, one that shouldn't penalize countries striving to control the preventable classical form. It was a pragmatic move, adapting policy to the scientific understanding.
Okay, so controlling BSE. If it takes years to show signs, and there's no traditional contagion, what does control even look like? Especially since you said there's no treatment or vaccine.
Correct. No effective treatment, no vaccine. So the primary control measure, the cornerstone really, is stringent feed bans.
One's banning ruminant protein in ruminant feed.
Exactly. The U.S. FDA put that main ban in place in 1997. Then in 2009, they strengthened it by banning specific high-risk tissues, SRMs, specified risk materials like brain and spinal cord from older cattle from all animal feed, not just cattle feed.
And these bans work.
They've proven to be highly effective in controlling classical BSE. It dramatically reduced the incidence.
And surveillance is still key, I assume.
Absolutely essential. Reporting any cattle showing neurological signs, targeted testing of high-risk animals, ones that are symptomatic, or older animals that can't walk, non-ambulatory.
What happens if an animal tests positive? Disposal must be tricky.
Very strict protocols. BSE-positive carcasses must never enter the human or animal food chain. Preferred disposal is through methods that destroy the prion, like alkaline digestion or high-temperature incineration. Other measures help too, like banning all non-ambulatory cattle from the human food supply.
It really highlights how different prion diseases are. You're not managing infection in live animals so much as preventing contamination of the environment and the food chain itself.
That's a great way to put it. It's a fundamental shift in approach compared to viral diseases like Rinderpest or FMD.
And we have to mention the public health link again. The connection between classical BSE and variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, VCJD, in humans who ate contaminated beef products.
Yes, that established link is what elevated BSE from a major animal health issue to a critical public health priority. It drove many of the strictest control measures.
Where do things stand globally now? BSE isn't in the headlines like it was.
Classical BSE is now very rare globally. The first case was UK, 1986, and that's where the vast majority occurred. Now, the incidence is less than 1 case per million cattle worldwide.
And in the U.S.?
The U.S. maintains its negligible risk status. Since 2003, there have only been 7 cases detected here, and 6 of those were the atypical form, mostly in older animals, not linked to the feed chain issue.
Okay, so we've covered Rinderpest, FMD, and BSE. 3 very different diseases, different challenges. Let's try to pull this together now. Comparing them side by side, what are the shared challenges they all present?
Well, the big one is economic devastation. All 3 can cause massive losses at dead animals, lost productivity, and huge disruptions to trade.
Right, trade comes up again and again.
It does. Their transboundary nature is another shared challenge. They don't respect borders. And across the board, we see the absolute importance of stringent biosecurity, good surveillance, and rapid early detection.
What else?
The challenge of animals that might be carriers or have long incubation periods like BSE, that silent spread potential makes control harder for all of them in different ways.
Okay, those are the similarities. But the differences are perhaps even more striking, aren't they?
Absolutely. Starting with the cause and etiology. Rinderpest and FMD are viruses. BSE is a prion. That fundamentally changes everything, how stable it is, how you inactivate it, whether you can treat it.
And transmit.
Very different. Rinderpest was mainly direct contact, contaminated things. FMD is super efficient, horizontally direct, indirect aerosols. Classical BSE is unique, primarily feed-borne.
The role of vaccination is a huge differentiator, too.
Massive. Rinderpest vaccine was the key to eradication. FMD vaccines exist but are complicated by trade rules. BSE, no vaccine exists.
Which links to eradication feasibility.
Exactly. Rinderpest achieved. FMD, still a huge, persistent challenge. BSE, classical form, largely controlled by feed bans. But atypical form means complete eradication of all BSE might be impossible.
And finally, the zoonotic potential, the risk to humans.
Yeah. Rinderpest and FMD are generally not considered direct human health risks. BSE, specifically classical BSE, has that definite serious link to VCJD in humans, a game changer. You know, looking at these 3 contrasting stories, Rinderpest eradication, the ongoing FMD battle, the unique BSE situation, it really revealed a critical epidemiological principle, I think.
Much is.
That how feasible it is to control or eradicate an FAD depends fundamentally on this interplay between the pathogen's own biology.
Like, is it a virus or prion? How does it spread?
Right, and the socioeconomic and political context it exists in.
Like the trade rules affecting FMD vaccination.
Exactly. Diseases with, let's say, simpler biology, where you have effective tools like a vaccine, and where policies don't actively hinder using those tools, those are the ones more amenable to control or even eradication, like we saw with Rinderpest.
So, reflecting on all this, what are the really key lessons we should take away from these efforts?
I think, number 1, you need an integrated approach. You can't just do one thing. It's surveillance plus biosecurity plus movement controls plus targeted prevention like vaccines or feed bans.
Okay, integration. What else?
International collaboration is paramount. Rinderpest proved it. These are global problems needing global solutions. Third, you have to adapt your strategy to the specific biology of the pathogen. Vaccines worked for Rinderpest. Feed bans were the key for BSE.
Makes sense.
Fourth, there's a clear economic case for investing proactively. Preventing outbreaks is almost always cheaper than cleaning up the mess afterwards.
That old ounce of prevention idea again.
It really applies here. Fifth, vigilance has to be continuous. Even when a disease is eradicated like Rinderpest or well-controlled like BSE in the U.S., you can't let your guard down.
And the last one?
Understanding that policy and science constantly interact. The FMD vaccine situation is the perfect example. Sometimes policies create barriers or incentives that really shape how scientific tools get used or don't get used.
So looking forward then, how do these lessons shape our preparedness for, well, for the next FAD, whatever it might be?
We need to keep pushing the science, obviously. Better, faster diagnostics, next-generation vaccines, maybe ones that address those trade issues for FMD or even tackle prions somehow, though that's tough. Genomic epidemiology using genetic sequencing to track outbreaks in real time.
Using tech more effectively.
Definitely. And refining our strategies. More risk-based surveillance-focusing efforts where the risk is highest. Really embracing the One Health approach.
One health.
Yeah, the idea that human health, animal health, and environmental health are all interconnected. We need veterinarians, doctors, ecologists, policymakers all working together. We also need to think about things like climate change, how that might alter disease patterns, and build stronger public-private partnerships.
Okay, so bringing this all home, what does this journey through Rinderpest, FMD, and BSE mean for you, the listener? These aren't just tales about sick cows, are they?
Not at all. They're powerful case studies, really. Lessons in global health, food security, economic stability, the power of science, the importance of cooperation.
Rinderpest shows us what's possible when the world works together toward a clear goal, an incredible achievement.
Truly. While FMD and BSE, they remind us that the challenges are often complex, persistent, evolving. They require adaptive solutions, continuous effort, and sometimes navigating tricky political and economic realities.
The core principles seem clear, though. Integrated strategies, global collaboration, adapting science and policy together, and investing proactively.
Absolutely. Our ongoing commitment to understanding and fighting these kinds of diseases, known and unknown, is really what underpins the resilience of agriculture and food systems worldwide.
So maybe something to think about next time you're at the grocery store or just thinking about our interconnected world. Consider this. How might our vigilance today in preventing some new foreign animal disease from taking hold actually prevent an unimaginable economic crisis or even a public health crisis years down the road? And what role do you think innovation, and maybe even more importantly, international cooperation, will play in protecting us all from whatever that next unknown threat might be? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.